What would you be willing to sacrifice for $1 million? For Lila, a struggling single mother, that question wasn't hypothetical. It was a contract with terms that would break most people. Bear a billionaire's child, then walk away forever. But as she steps into Kareem's world of unimaginable wealth, something unexpected happens. The cold-hearted billionaire who purchased her at an auction begins to show cracks in his carefully constructed walls. Their arrangement was supposed to be simple, yet what happens between them will challenge everything you thought about love, sacrifice, and the price we put on human connection. What would drive a mother to sell herself at an auction? The answer lies in the daily choices no parent should have to make. For Lila, those choices had become increasingly impossible with each passing day. The refrigerator that once hummed with promise now echoed with emptiness. The kitchen cabinets revealed nothing but a few stale crackers and a half-empty jar of peanut butter. Meanwhile, the bright red eviction notice taped to her apartment door screamed a 72-hour countdown to homelessness. Lila's life hadn't always been defined by such desperate circumstances. After her husband walked out 3 years ago, she'd managed to keep their heads above water through sheer determination. 3 jobs, morning shifts at the local diner, afternoon hours cleaning houses, and late nights entering data for an insurance company, barely covered rent for their tiny one-bedroom apartment in the forgotten corner of the city. Her son, Aman, now 7, spent his afternoons with an elderly neighbor who charged less than formal childcare but offered little more than a television and occasional cookies. The breaking point came when Aman developed pneumonia. The medical bills demolished what little safety net Lila had managed to build. She'd watched her son's face grow hollow from hunger, his once vibrant eyes dimming as he quietly asked why they couldn't turn the heat on, despite the winter chill. Each night, after tucking him in with extra blankets, Lila would sit at their small kitchen table calculating and recalculating figures that never balanced, no matter how she arranged them. The discovery of the auction happened by accident. Cleaning the mansion of a wealthy client, Lila overheard a conversation between her employer and a friend, hushed tones discussing an exclusive underground event where wealthy men bid on women for various arrangements. Her first reaction was revulsion, quickly followed by moral outrage. But as she scrubbed the already gleaming marble floors, a terrible thought took root. The amounts mentioned in that whispered conversation could solve every problem crushing her family. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. The ceiling above her pull-out couch became a projection screen for her spiraling thoughts. What kind of mother would even consider such a thing? The self-loathing was suffocating, yet when Eamon coughed in his sleep, that hollow, rattling sound, that meant his medication wasn't working well enough. Maternal instinct overrode everything else. By morning, she had made a decision that felt simultaneously like surrender and the most aggressive fight of her life. Finding the auction required careful navigation, a discreet question to her employer's personal assistant, framed as innocent curiosity, a series of vague text messages, finally, a location and time, delivered with explicit instructions. Come alone. Wear something flattering but modest. Bring identification. The week before the auction, Lila lived in a fog of contradictions. During the day, she moved through her routine mechanically, serving coffee with a smile, scrubbing toilets with efficiency, entering endless streams of numbers. At night, she researched the legal implications, discovering the carefully constructed contracts that made such arrangements technically legal if framed as companionship with gifts rather than payment for services. 3 days before the auction, Lila sat Aman down for a conversation that broke her heart. She told him she might need to go away for work sometimes, but that everything she did was to make their lives better. His innocent acceptance, "It's okay, Mama, I can be brave," nearly shattered her resolve. That night, she cried until there were no tears left, then rose the next morning with steel in her spine. The night of the auction arrived with cruel indifference to her internal turmoil. The venue was a converted warehouse in the industrial district, its exterior deliberately nondescript, while its interior gleamed with luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung from exposed beams, plush velvet seating arranged theater style, and a raised platform that made Lila's stomach clench when she first glimpsed it. Backstage, 20 women waited in various states of tension. Some chatted nervously, veterans explaining the process to newcomers. Others sat in stony silence, their eyes fixed on nothing. A coordinator moved among them, checking names against a tablet, providing numbered tags, and explaining the rules in a tone that suggested she was discussing a charity raffle rather than human auction. Remember, ladies, you have the right to reject any winning bid for any reason. The house takes 20%. All arrangements must be finalized through our legal team. The woman smiled with practiced warmth that never reached her eyes. Good luck. When Lila's number was called, her legs nearly failed her. The walk from backstage to the platform seemed endless. Bright lights made it difficult to see the audience clearly. A small mercy. A man with a microphone introduced her with manufactured enthusiasm. Next we have Lila, 32 years old, educated, and refined. Gentlemen, I can personally vouch for her grace under pressure. Polite laughter rippled through the audience. Bidding starts at $50,000. Standing under those lights, Lila experienced a dissociation so profound it felt like watching herself from above. Part of her wanted to run, to tear off the borrowed dress and flee back to her son. Another part mentally calculated what each increasing bid could provide. Rent for a year, proper medical care for Aman, perhaps even a modest college fund. The numbers climbed steadily. 60,000. 75. 100. With each new bid, Lila's heart raced faster. When the bidding hit 200,000, she thought surely it would end soon. Then a voice cut through the room, silencing all others. $1 million. The auctioneer faltered, momentarily struck speechless. The audience turned as one toward a figure partially hidden in the shadows of a private box. The man stepped forward, revealing himself in the dim light. Tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that suggested old money and refined taste. His face remained impassive, giving away nothing of his thoughts. I believe I said 1 million, he repeated, his voice carrying a hint of impatience. I assume that concludes our business. The auctioneer recovered quickly, hammering down his gavel with theatrical finality. Sold to Mr. Kareem Al-Rashid. Time seemed to stop. $1 million. The number was so far beyond Lila's comprehension that it didn't register as real. It was enough to change everything, to secure Aman's future completely, to never again worry about food or shelter or medical care. It was salvation, wrapped in a transaction that made her soul wither. A coordinator appeared at her elbow, guiding her from the stage with practiced efficiency. This way, please. Mr. Al-Rashid prefers to finalize arrangements immediately. Lila followed numbly, led through a maze of hallways to a private room furnished with uncomfortable elegance. There she waited, heart pounding, until the door opened and the man who had just purchased her with a casual bid stepped inside. Kareem Al-Rashid was even more imposing up close. Tall with broad shoulders, his movements precise and controlled. Dark eyes assessed her with clinical detachment, as if confirming the value of a recently acquired asset. When he spoke, his voice carried the slight accent of someone educated internationally. I assume we both prefer to handle this efficiently, he said, gesturing for her to sit as his assistant placed a leather portfolio on the table between them. My lawyers have prepared standard terms. As Kareem's assistant opened the leather portfolio, neither wealth nor desperation had prepared Lila for the cold reality of what standard terms actually meant in the world of the ultra-wealthy. The single clause buried on page 3 would force her to make the most unnatural choice any mother could face, carrying a child for 9 months only to hand it over forever, as if returning a borrowed item. The private room where Kareem presented the contract had been designed for business, not emotion. Dark wood paneling absorbed what little warmth the recessed lighting offered. The space felt airless, as if the walls themselves were closing in with each passing moment. Kareem sat across from her, perfectly still, his expression revealing nothing, as Lila's eyes moved across the document. Take your time, he said, though his tone suggested he expected efficiency rather than careful consideration. My legal team has been very thorough. Thorough indeed. The clinical language disguised the human reality beneath. Words like gestational carrier instead of mother, genetic material instead of child, termination of parental rights instead of giving away your baby. It was as if the contract had been deliberately written to strip away the humanity of what was being asked. When Lila reached the 3rd page, her breath caught. There it was, laid out in cold, impersonal text. Upon delivery of the child, she would surrender all parental rights. She would have no claim to visitation, no right to know how the child was raised, no future connection whatsoever. In essence, she was being asked to grow a human being inside her body, only to hand it over, as if it were a product she had manufactured. "This can't be," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's quite standard," Kareem interrupted, adjusting his cufflinks. "The agreement ensures clean legal lines, no complications." He spoke as if discussing a corporate merger rather than the creation of a human life. Lila looked up from the contract, studying the man across from her. His expression remained neutral, untroubled by what he was proposing. "You want me to carry your child for 9 months and then just disappear? I require an heir," he stated simply. "Not a wife, not a partner, and certainly not the complications of shared custody. The financial compensation is more than fair." The sum was indeed staggering. Enough to secure a man's future, enough to escape the cycle of poverty that had trapped her. But the emotional cost loomed larger with each passing second. Every maternal instinct within her rebelled against the very concept. "Do you understand what you're asking?" Lila pressed, struggling to keep her voice steady. "This isn't like hiring someone to clean your house or drive your car. You're asking me to surrender a child, my child, that I will carry inside me." Kareem's expression shifted slightly, a momentary flash of impatience crossing his features before the mask of professional detachment returned. "Biologically speaking, yes. Legally speaking, no. The child will be mine alone, created with my genetic material and that of an anonymous egg donor. Your role is temporary by design." His words revealed the desensitizing effect of extreme wealth, the ability to view relationships, even the most sacred ones, as mere transactions. In his world, everything and everyone had a price, could be acquired, utilized, and dispensed with when no longer needed. Lila felt the weight of impossible choices bearing down on her. On one side, the primal, instinctive bond that forms between mother and child during pregnancy, a connection that transcends logic, a relationship written in biology and emotion rather than legal terminology. On the other, the face of her son Aman flashed in her mind, hopeful, trusting that somehow his mother would find a way to keep them afloat. "I need a moment," she said, standing abruptly and walking to the window. Outside, the city sprawled beneath them, lives unfolding in countless apartments and houses, parents making sacrifices for their children every day. None quite like this, though. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, closing her eyes. The maternal instinct to protect extended to both children now, the one she already loved and raised, and the one she would be asked to surrender. How could any mother make such a choice? Yet mothers throughout history had made impossible decisions to save their children, just rarely with such clinical paperwork involved. When she returned to the table, her face had hardened into resolve. "I need to make one thing clear," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'm not doing this because I believe in the principle of what you're proposing. I'm doing this because I have no better choice." Kareem nodded once, seemingly satisfied with her practicality, regardless of her reasoning. He slid the contract closer to her, along with an expensive fountain pen. The signature lines are marked. Lila's hand trembled as she took the pen, its weight symbolic of the burden she was about to assume. The tip hovered above the paper as her mind flashed to Aman, waiting at his friend's house, unaware that his mother was about to sign away a sibling he would never know. She thought of the rent she couldn't pay, the hunger she couldn't satisfy, the opportunities slipping away with each passing day. The room fell silent except for the faint ticking of an antique clock on the wall. Kareem watched her, his expression impossible to read. Was there a flicker of doubt behind those calculating eyes? A moment of recognition of what he was actually asking of another human being? If so, it vanished quickly, replaced by the cool assessment of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Lila remembered reading once about surrogates who described the psychological impact of surrendering the babies they carried, the profound sense of loss, the identity crisis, the grief that followed. Yet here she sat, voluntarily signing up for that pain, knowing it was coming, walking toward it with open eyes because the alternative seemed worse. The pen touched paper, and Lila felt something inside her break. The scratch of the nib against paper seemed unnaturally loud in the quiet room. each stroke of her signature relinquishing rights to a child not yet conceived. As she signed the final page, a tear escaped despite her determination to remain composed, landing on the contract and blurring a small portion of the text. He pretended not to notice, quickly collecting the papers and returning them to the portfolio. "My assistant will provide you with a copy," he said, standing to indicate their business was concluded. "The car is waiting to take you to the mansion. Dr. Levine will examine you tomorrow to confirm your health status before we proceed with implantation." Just like that, clinical, efficient, devoid of the emotional weight of what had just transpired, Lila remained seated, momentarily unable to stand, feeling the enormity of what she had just committed to. The marble floor felt cold beneath Lila's feet as she stepped into what would be her home for the next 9 months. But as the massive oak doors closed behind her with a resonant thud, she understood immediately. This wasn't a home, but an exquisite prison. The soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and priceless artwork that adorned every wall might have impressed her under different circumstances. Instead, each luxury fixture served as a reminder of the invisible bars surrounding her new life. A uniformed staff member guided her through corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly. "Mr. Al-Rashid has arranged for your belongings to be placed in the East Wing, madam," the woman explained, her voice formal and practiced. "Your suite includes a bedroom, sitting area, and private bathroom. Mr. Al-Rashid requests that you make yourself comfortable before dinner is served at 7. Comfort seemed an impossible concept as Lila followed silently, taking in the vastness of the mansion. Where her old apartment could have fit in what appeared to be just one of many sitting rooms, here a single hallway contained more square footage than any home she'd ever lived in. The contrast was jarring. From counting pennies for bus fare to walking on imported marble that probably cost more than she'd earned in her lifetime. When finally left alone in her suite, Lila stood frozen, overwhelmed by the opulence. The bedroom featured a 4-poster bed draped in silks that complemented the hand-painted ceiling mural. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens that stretched toward high walls topped with discreet security cameras, beauty and surveillance in perfect harmony. The first weeks established a routine that made Lila feel less like a person and more like a valuable acquisition being maintained. Dr. Levine visited 3 times weekly to monitor her health. A nutritionist planned every meal according to optimal fertility requirements. A personal trainer arrived each afternoon to guide her through exercises, appropriate for a woman preparing for implantation. Every aspect of her existence was controlled, optimized, and scheduled. "You must understand," Kareem explained during one of their rare interactions, his voice detached as if discussing a business investment. "Your physical condition directly impacts our arrangement's success. These measures ensure optimal outcomes." The staff maintained a polite distance, clearly aware of her position in the household. All except one, Amira, the head housekeeper, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. Unlike the others, she didn't treat Lila as merely another asset in Kareem's portfolio. "You didn't eat your breakfast again," Amira noted one morning, entering Lila's suite with fresh towels. "The nutritionist will report this to Mr. Al-Rashid." "I can't stomach food first thing in the morning," Lila admitted. Never could. Instead of the expected lecture about compliance, Amira sat on the edge of the bed. "What if we adjust your breakfast schedule? Start with just tea and toast, then the full meal an hour later? I can arrange it without troubling anyone." This small act of compassion, treating Lila's preferences as valid rather than inconvenient, formed the first crack in her isolation. Over the following days, Amira became Lila's tenuous connection to normalcy, occasionally lingering during her duties to share stories about her grandchildren or ask Lila about her interests. "You spend so much time staring at the garden," Amira observed one afternoon. "Do you enjoy plants?" "I never had space for a garden before," Lila admitted, "but I've always loved them. They remind me that growth is possible even in difficult circumstances." The next morning, Lila found a small potted jasmine on her windowsill, Amira's silent gift. That tiny plant became the first element of the room that felt truly hers. To preserve her sense of self amid the suffocating luxury, Lila began crafting small personal rituals. Each morning before the household stirred, she walked the perimeter of the garden, memorizing each plant, noting daily changes, claiming this small freedom for herself. At night, she held sacred her calls with a man, treasuring his excited chatter about school and friends, carefully avoiding any details about her new circumstances that might worry him. "Are you in a castle, Mama?" he asked once, hearing the echo in the marble bathroom where she'd taken the call. "Something like that," she answered, swallowing the lump in her throat. "A temporary one." In the ornate desk drawer, she kept a journal hidden beneath silk-lined stationery, recording not just events, but her emotions, fears, and occasional moments of unexpected peace. These small acts of autonomy, walking, connecting with her son, and documenting her experience, became her armor against the mansion's dehumanizing grandeur. The architecture itself seemed designed to emphasize isolation. Vast spaces separated living areas, creating an atmosphere where human connection felt impossible by design. Even sounds were swallowed by the cavernous rooms, making the mansion feel perpetually empty, despite the staff moving efficiently through its spaces. The Middle Eastern architectural influences combined classical grandeur with modern luxury, yet the overall effect was soulless, beautiful, but devoid of warmth. Gradually, Lila began noticing contradictions in Kareem's carefully maintained facade. Despite his clinical approach to their arrangement, certain inconsistencies suggested depths he preferred to keep hidden. When she broke a valuable vase accidentally, his reaction wasn't the anger she expected, but rather indifference. "It's just an object," he said, surprising her. "Replaceable." During one of her morning walks, a heavy rainstorm caught her far from the house. As she rushed back, soaked and shivering, Kareem appeared at the entrance with a towel. "You should be more careful," he said, his tone softer than usual. "Your health is important." The concern, however clinical, revealed a humanity his business demeanor typically concealed. The most revealing moment came 60 days into her stay. During her morning walk, Lila ventured into a section of the garden she hadn't fully explored. A small walled area housing a single plant unlike any others on the property. Unlike the meticulously landscaped grounds, this plant grew in what appeared to be an ordinary terracotta pot, its leaves slightly yellowed at the edges despite obvious care. "That's private?" Kareem's voice startled her from behind. Lila turned to find him standing in the garden entrance, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. It was my mother's," he said after a long silence. "The only thing of hers I managed to keep alive after she passed." The unexpected personal revelation hung between them. For the first time, Kareem wasn't the billionaire who had purchased her at an auction, but simply a man with a history of loss, maintaining a connection to someone he'd loved. Desert rose, Lila identified the plant. They're notoriously difficult to maintain in this climate. Kareem's surprise was evident. "You know plants?" "My grandmother grew them. They need special care. Less water than you'd think, but consistent light." He studied her with new interest. "The gardener keeps overwatering it. I've been meaning to speak with him. May I?" Lila gestured toward the plant. When he nodded, she gently pressed the soil with her fingers. "It's too damp. The roots can't breathe." Something shifted in that moment, a small but significant change in how they regarded each other. The following day, Lila found gardening tools and a book on desert plants, delivered to her suite without comment. The silent invitation to tend his mother's plant represented the first genuine connection between them, one based on something other than their contract. As weeks passed, the power dynamics within the household subtly evolved. While Kareem maintained his distance, small considerations appeared. Books left in her room that matched interests she'd mentioned to Amira, modifications to her schedule, allowing more time in the garden, a television installed so she could watch her favorite programs. Those books appearing in Lila's room weren't just random gifts. They were breadcrumbs leading to the labyrinth of Kareem's carefully guarded heart. While his calculated gestures signaled a shifting power dynamic, the true story was written in the shadows of his mansion, in the late-night piano playing that echoed through empty hallways, and in the devotion to a struggling desert rose that connected him to something he'd lost long ago. Behind the immaculate suits and commanding presence that dominated boardrooms, across Dubai, lay a man haunted by ghosts of expectation. As heir to the Al Rashid Empire, Kareem had never been simply a son. He was a vessel for dynasty, a continuation of bloodline, the living embodiment of his father's legacy. The weight of this inheritance had shaped every aspect of his existence, from his education at elite European institutions to his calculated business decisions that had tripled the family fortune. The mansion's east wing remained perpetually locked. Lila had noticed this peculiarity during her third week when exploring the sprawling residence. Only Karim entered this sacred space, disappearing for hours on end. It was Amira who finally revealed its purpose, a shrine to Karim's mother, preserved exactly as she had left it when she died suddenly when Karim was only 9 years old. He was different before, Amira confided one afternoon while arranging fresh flowers. As a child, he laughed, he created, he dreamed of becoming a musician. The housekeeper's eyes clouded with memory. After she passed, his father remade him. No more music lessons, only business training. No more imagination, only strategy. The revelation cast Karim's midnight piano sessions in a new light. The melancholy notes that sometimes drifted through the mansion weren't merely a hobby. They were conversations with a ghost. The only safe expression of emotion in a world that had taught him vulnerability was weakness. The rare glimpses of Karim's unguarded self became a fascination for Lila. She observed him one evening through the garden doors, kneeling beside his mother's desert rose, measuring soil moisture with scientific precision while whispering to the plant in Arabic. The tenderness in his movements contradicted everything about the man who had purchased her at auction. In the presence of others, particularly his business associates who occasionally visited, Karim underwent a transformation so complete it was unsettling. His voice deepened, his posture stiffened, his expressions became calibrated performances of authority. "You're watching a man become a monument," Amira had explained when Lila mentioned this observation. His father taught him that power respects only power, never heart. This duality extended to his living spaces. The formal areas of the mansion, the grand foyer, the entertaining rooms, the show kitchen, gleamed with untouched perfection, designed to impress rather than comfort. But Lila had discovered Karim's private study contained well-worn leather chairs, books with dog-eared pages, and framed photographs, the only ones in the entire mansion, of a beautiful woman with Karim's same intense eyes, holding a small boy who smiled without reservation. 3 months into her stay, Lila awoke to the sound of distress. Following the noise to Karim's wing, she found him pacing in his study, phone pressed to his ear, voice raw with emotion. When he noticed her standing in the doorway, he abruptly ended the call. "My father's health has deteriorated," he stated flatly, though his clenched fists betrayed his composure. "The doctors are not optimistic." "I'm sorry," Lila offered, expecting him to dismiss her. Instead, he gestured to a chair. "He's asking about the baby. Even now, lying in a hospital bed, his concern is for the continuation of the bloodline." Bitterness edged his words. 40 years as his son, and my only value remains my ability to produce an heir. The confession hung in the air between them, the first truly honest exchange they'd shared. In that moment, pieces of the puzzle that was Karim al-Rashid began to align. The contract, the auction, the clinical approach to creating a child, all of it stemmed from a lifetime of conditional love, where worth was measured in legacy rather than emotion. "My mother was different," he continued unexpectedly, pouring 2 glasses of water with unsteady hands. "She believed family meant connection, not just continuation. After she died, my father erased her philosophy from our home. He said her sentimentality was a weakness that would undermine the al-Rashid name." "And you believed him," Lila said, a statement rather than a question. Karim's gaze met hers, startled by her directness. "I was a child. What choice did I have? And now?" she pressed. The question seemed to catch him off guard. He turned to the window, silhouetted against the pre-dawn darkness. "Now I've become exactly what he created. A man who purchases a mother for his child because relationships are too messy, too unpredictable. A man who follows his father's blueprint for legacy without questioning its cost." This rare vulnerability triggered something protective in Lila. The man before her wasn't the confident billionaire who had bid $1 million without hesitation. He was someone wounded, navigating the shadow of parental loss through the only path he'd been shown. The emotional walls he'd constructed weren't signs of coldness, but desperate self-preservation. Their conversation marked a turning point. Kareem began joining Lila for breakfast, asking about her night's sleep, her comfort, her interests beyond what affected the pregnancy. He brought books from his personal library that he thought might interest her: poetry collections, historical biographies, architectural volumes, each selection revealing another facet of the mind behind the mask. During an unexpected thunderstorm that trapped them both inside for an afternoon, Kareem hesitantly shared that his mother had taught him to play chess. When Lila confessed she'd never learned, something shifted in his expression, a spark of genuine animation as he retrieved an ornate board from his study. "My father discouraged games," he explained, setting up the pieces with reverent precision. "He said they distracted from productive pursuits, but my mother insisted chess built strategic thinking." A smile touched his lips. She was cleverly speaking his language to protect something that brought us joy. As weeks passed, Lila recognized that her presence was disrupting patterns established over decades. The contract had anticipated a clinical arrangement, a business transaction with clear deliverables. It hadn't accounted for conversations that stretched into evening, shared meals where Kareem actually tasted his food, rather than merely consuming it, or moments when genuine laughter escaped him, seeming to surprise him as much as it delighted her. One evening, after Lila mentioned Amira's revelation about his childhood musical aspirations, Kareem led her to the East Wing. The air felt different here, undisturbed, preserved in time. He unlocked double doors to reveal a room centered around a magnificent grand piano. "This was her sanctuary," he said quietly. "My father wanted to convert it to additional office space after she died. It was the only time I ever openly defied him." His fingers brushed the keys with familiar intimacy, and for the first time, Lila witnessed Kareem play not in secretive midnight sessions, but deliberately, for her. The composition was complex, emotional, revealing technical skill that could only come from ongoing practice, despite his father's disapproval. When the final notes faded, neither spoke. The vulnerability of the moment needed no commentary. Kareem had allowed her to witness something he had hidden from the world, the part of himself that remained connected to his mother, to emotion, to beauty, without practical purpose. As the music faded in the room that day, something deeper had begun to take root between Lila and Kareem. The vulnerability he'd shown at the piano, that glimpse of the boy who once played for his mother, created a fragile bridge between their worlds. But what neither knew was that truth, like a photograph hidden away, can sometimes be the most destructive force of all. Kareem hadn't planned to enter Lila's room that afternoon. A simple question about dinner preferences had led him to her door, which stood slightly ajar. When his knock went unanswered, he hesitated before stepping inside, telling himself it was his house after all. The sunlight streamed through gauzy curtains, illuminating the room she'd made unmistakably hers, despite its temporary nature. A book left open on the bed, a scarf draped over the chair, the faint scent of jasmine lingering in the air. He might have left immediately if not for the drawer left partially open, as if closed in haste. Something caught his eye, the corner of a photograph peeking out beneath folded papers. Perhaps it was curiosity, perhaps something else, but he found himself reaching for it before he could question his own invasion of privacy. The photo showed a young boy, perhaps 6 or 7, with Lila's unmistakable smile and dark, intelligent eyes. They sat together on a park bench, ice cream cones in hand, their faces bright with laughter. The intimacy of the moment struck him first. This was clearly her child. Then came the realization. She had never once mentioned having a son. When Lila returned from her garden walk 30 minutes later, she found Kareem waiting in the sitting room, the photograph placed deliberately on the coffee table between them. His posture was rigid, his expression carefully constructed into the mask of the businessman she'd first met. "You have a son," he said, the words falling like stones between them. Lila's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room. Her hand instinctively moved toward the photograph, before falling back to her side. "Yes," she finally whispered. "His name is Aman. And you didn't think this was worth mentioning?" The coldness in his voice barely concealed something else. Hurt, betrayal, perhaps even fear. "Not during our negotiations, not during these weeks living under the same roof. I was afraid," Lila admitted, her voice small but steady. Afraid you wouldn't choose me if you knew. Afraid it would complicate things. She met his gaze directly. I needed this arrangement to work. For him. So you lied. The judgment in those 3 words hung heavy in the air. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. Even to her own ears, the distinction sounded hollow. An omission this significant is a lie, Lila. Kareem stood, pacing the length of the window. How can I trust anything you've said if you've hidden something this fundamental? A child. Your child. The silence stretched between them, taut with unspoken emotions. When Kareem finally spoke again, his voice had lost its edge, replaced with something more dangerous. Quiet disappointment. I've shared things with you I've never told anyone. About my mother. About my father. And all this time, you've been keeping the most important part of your life from me. Lila sank into the chair, tears threatening, but not falling. I was protecting him. And myself. You have to understand. I've spent years doing whatever it takes to keep him safe. Fed. Housed. Her voice gained strength as she continued. When you've lived on the edge of losing everything, you learn to protect what matters at all costs, even if it means hiding parts of yourself. And what about the future? Were you planning to disappear after our child is born, returning to another life I knew nothing about? I didn't have a plan beyond survival, Lila admitted. Beyond making sure a man would be okay. The revelation created an immediate chasm between them. Over the next days, the mansion that had begun to feel like a home reverted to the prison it had once been. Kareem retreated into his work, leaving before sunrise and returning late. Meals were taken separately. The piano remained silent. Conversations became functional exchanges about schedules and appointments. For Lila, the silence was unbearable. Each day without speaking to Aman tore at her, but she feared asking for anything now might shatter what little remained between them. She caught Kareem watching her sometimes, his expression unreadable, as if trying to reconcile the woman he thought he knew with this new reality. On the 5th day, Lila found herself in the garden, seeking comfort among the plants. The desert rose stood resilient against the morning sun, its delicate pink blooms deceptively strong. She touched a petal gently, thinking of Kareem's mother, of loss, of the things we keep to remember those we love. You miss him? Kareem's voice startled her. She hadn't heard him approach. Lila didn't pretend to misunderstand. Every minute of every day. Tell me about him. The request was soft, unexpected, and so she did. About a man's boundless curiosity, his love of dinosaurs and space, how he insisted on sleeping with his bedroom window open so he could see the stars, how he'd learned to read early because she'd read to him every night, no matter how exhausted she was, how his laugh could transform even the darkest day. As she spoke, something in Kareem's expression shifted, the wall of betrayal beginning to crack. Where is he now? He asked when she finally fell silent. With my neighbor, Mrs. Patel. She's been caring for him while I'm here. The pain of separation laced her words. Kareem was quiet for a long moment, studying the desert rose as if it might offer guidance. A child needs his mother, he said finally. 3 days later, without warning, a car arrived. Lila, confused, was informed by Amira that Kareem had arranged for her to visit Aman. The shock of this gesture, this acknowledgement of her needs as a mother, left her speechless. When she returned that evening, eyes still bright from the joy of holding her son, she found Kareem waiting in the library. Thank you, she said simply, the words inadequate for the gift he'd given her. You should see him regularly, Kareem replied, his voice carefully neutral. We can arrange weekly visits. Why did you do this? Lila asked, needing to understand. Kareem's gaze met hers, something new in his expression. Because I know what it's like to lose a mother. I wouldn't wish that on any child. He hesitated before adding, and because I'm beginning to understand that this arrangement, our arrangement, involves more than just the two of us. The acknowledgement wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Trust, once broken, couldn't be repaired in a single gesture. But as Lila looked at him, she saw something she hadn't expected. Empathy, emerging from the ashes of betrayal. A willingness to see beyond the contract to the complex reality of their lives. The fragile trust rebuilding between Lila and Kareem was about to face its greatest test. What happens when a child, innocent, unfiltered, and brutally honest, meets the man who had essentially purchased their mother? The inevitable collision of these separate worlds would force both adults to confront uncomfortable truths about their arrangement and themselves. "I think it's time I met Aman," Kareem said one evening as they finished dinner, his voice casual, but his posture rigid with tension. The suggestion hung in the air, stunning Lila into momentary silence. When she finally found her voice, it trembled slightly. "You want to meet my son? Why now?" Kareem's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Because he's important to you, and because—" He hesitated, seemingly searching for words that wouldn't come easily to a man accustomed to boardroom directness rather than emotional vulnerability. "Because I want to understand your world better." For Lila, the proposal triggered a storm of conflicting emotions. The regular visits Kareem had arranged had been a blessing, but they had existed in a separate reality, a bubble where she could pretend her arrangement with Kareem didn't exist. Now, he wanted to pierce that protective barrier, bringing together the two most important people in her life, under circumstances she could never have imagined. "What would I even tell him about who you are?" she asked, voicing her most immediate concern. "The truth," Kareem replied, simply, or at least, a version of it he can understand. In the days leading up to the meeting, Lila's anxiety manifested in countless small ways. She found herself obsessively cleaning their modest apartment before each of Kareem's scheduled visits. Though she knew he had seen far grander spaces, she rehearsed potential conversations in her head, anticipating awkward questions Aman might ask with his characteristic directness. "Remember to say please and thank you," she reminded Aman the morning of their meeting, adjusting his collar for the 5th time. "And don't ask too many questions all at once." "But you always say questions are how we learn," Aman protested, squirming away from her fussing hands. Lila smiled despite her nerves. "You're right. Just be yourself. That's all anyone can ask." On the other side of town, Kareem was experiencing an unfamiliar sensation: nervousness. He, who negotiated billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, found himself changing his tie 3 times before settling on one Lila had once casually mentioned liking. The staff exchanged puzzled glances as he personally inspected the refreshments prepared for their young visitor, ensuring child-friendly options were available alongside the usual sophisticated fare. When the doorbell rang, Kareem took a deep breath before opening it personally, rather than allowing the staff to perform their usual duties. The sight that greeted him was striking. Lila, looking more natural and at ease than he'd ever seen her, holding the hand of a small boy whose curious eyes immediately locked onto his. "Hello," Kareem said, crouching down slightly to meet Aman at eye level. "You must be Aman. I've heard a lot about you." The boy studied him with unabashed curiosity before asking the question that would change everything. "Are you my mom's friend?" 4 simple words, innocent yet profoundly complex in this context. Kareem glanced up at Lila, whose expression contained equal parts fear and hope, before returning his attention to Aman. "Yes," he answered, making a decision in that moment that surprised even himself. "I am your mother's friend." What followed was an afternoon unlike any Kareem had experienced. The careful script he'd mentally prepared fell away as Aman pulled him into the unpredictable world of childhood, showing him a collection of rocks he'd brought in his pocket. "This one's from Mars, probably." Challenging him to an impromptu race across the garden, and asking questions about the mansion that adults would consider impolite, but children recognize as simply direct. "Why do you have so many rooms if it's just you?" Aman asked as they toured the house. "Don't you get lonely?" Kareem found himself answering with unexpected honesty. "Sometimes I do. That's why it's nice to have visitors like you and your mother." For Lila, watching their interaction revealed a side of Kareem she'd never witnessed. The man who had once coldly presented her with a contract detailing her reproductive obligations was now patiently explaining the workings of the mansion's fountain system to her wide-eyed son. The businessman, who measured worth in assets and acquisitions, was now genuinely laughing as a man demonstrated his best dinosaur roar. Most revealing was observing how Kareem studied her interactions with a man, the way she knew exactly how to redirect his energy when he became too excited, how she encouraged his curiosity while setting gentle boundaries, the shorthand language of inside jokes and familiar routines they shared. In these moments, she wasn't the woman he had purchased at auction. She was a mother, confident and complete in a role that transcended their arrangement. During a quiet moment when Aman was distracted by the garden's koi pond, Kareem approached Lila. "He's remarkable," he said softly. "You've done an extraordinary job raising him." He's had to adapt to a lot, Lila replied, watching her son with tender pride. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for, but they need stability, consistent love. Something shifted in Kareem's expression, a realization forming behind his eyes. The way you are with him, I've never seen anything like it. Not in my family, certainly. What do you mean? There's no performance to it, no agenda. You're just his mother, completely present. As afternoon faded into evening, Aman's energy finally began to wane. Curled against Lila's side on one of the mansion's plush sofas, he fought to keep his eyes open as Kareem described the constellations visible from the estate's observatory. We should go, Lila said gently, stroking her son's hair. It's been a long day. I don't want to go, Aman protested sleepily. I like it here. It's like a castle. Kareem watched this domestic tableau for a long moment before speaking. Perhaps you wouldn't have to leave. Lila's hand froze mid-stroke. What are you saying? The East Wing has several unused suites. There's more than enough room for both of you. His voice was carefully controlled, but his eyes revealed the magnitude of what he was proposing. Aman could have the garden, the library. There's a good school nearby. Kareem, our arrangement was never meant to include this, he finished for her. I know, but things have changed. I've changed. He glanced at the drowsy boy. He shouldn't have to wonder where his mother goes when she visits me, and you shouldn't have to divide your life in two. The proposition hung between them, monumental in its implications. This wasn't a contractual adjustment or business compromise. It was Kareem dismantling the very foundation of their arrangement, replacing transaction with something resembling family. Would you at least consider it? He asked, when she remained silent. Lila looked down at Aman, then back at Kareem. Yes, I'll consider it. In the car ride back to their apartment, with Aman fast asleep in the back seat, Lila found herself at a crossroads. Kareem's offer represented everything she had wanted for her son: security, opportunity, stability. But it also meant entrusting their future to a man who had once seen her as a means to an end, a transaction rather than a person. Contracts can bind people together, but they can't dictate how hearts evolve. Back in his mansion, Kareem pulled out the document that had brought Lila into his life, the cold, clinical pages that reduced her to a service provider and their child to a transaction. His fingers trembled as he held the paper, suddenly seeing it through new eyes. For the first time since drafting the agreement, Kareem felt a wave of disgust wash over him. How could he have reduced something as profound as creating life to mere paragraphs of legal jargon? The man who had written these terms felt like a stranger to him now, someone cold, calculating, and painfully alone. He paced his study for hours that night, the contract burning a hole in his consciousness. The next morning, Kareem made a call that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. I need the contract redrafted, he told his lawyer, his voice firm despite the internal turmoil. All clauses regarding separation after birth need to be removed. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Sir, if I may, his lawyer began cautiously. You may not, Kareem interrupted. This isn't a business decision, it's a human one. This single act represented a seismic shift in Kareem's worldview. A man who had built his empire on ironclad agreements and leveraging control was willingly dismantling the very foundation of power he'd established with Lila. For someone who had been taught since childhood that vulnerability was weakness, relinquishing control felt like stepping off a cliff without knowing what waited below. When the revised contract arrived, Kareem studied it carefully before arranging to present it to Lila. The new terms acknowledged her full parental rights, established generous financial support for both children, and removed all obligations for her to leave after the birth. It was no longer a transaction, but a foundation for a family. What is this? Lila asked when he placed the document before her, suspicion evident in her eyes. After all they'd been through, trust remained fragile between them. Freedom, Kareem answered simply. Your choice to stay or go, to be a mother to our child without conditions. Lila's fingers traced the lines of text, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. Why now? What changed? I did, Kareem admitted. The simplicity of his answer concealed the profound transformation occurring within him. The man who once saw relationships as assets to be acquired and managed was experiencing something entirely new. the humbling recognition that some connections transcend ownership and control. Lila's initial reaction was guarded. Years of struggling and fighting for survival had taught her to question unexpected generosity. "Is this another type of trap?" she asked bluntly. "A different kind of cage with prettier bars?" Her question cut deep, but Kareem understood the source of her doubt. "I've given you every reason to question my motives," he acknowledged. "I can only ask you to judge me by my actions from this point forward." In the days that followed, a delicate dance unfolded between them. The physical document of the new contract sat on Lila's nightstand, both a promise and a question mark. She would pick it up sometimes, reading through the terms as if searching for hidden clauses that might reveal Kareem's true intentions. Meanwhile, subtle shifts began to transform the atmosphere of the mansion. Conversations that once centered around clinical updates about Lila's health evolved into genuine exchanges about hopes, fears, and memories. Silences between them grew comfortable rather than tense. The careful distance they had maintained began to close, first in small ways, a hand reaching to pass the salt lingering a moment longer than necessary, eyes meeting across a room and holding rather than darting away. Aman's presence accelerated this transformation. The boy had adapted to mansion life with the remarkable resilience of childhood, turning vast hallways into racing tracks and discovering secret nooks perfect for hiding treasures. Watching him, Kareem found himself smiling more frequently than he had in years. They began establishing rituals that marked the emergence of something resembling a family. Sunday morning breakfasts became an elaborate affair, with Aman insisting on helping prepare fruit salad despite his questionable cutting skills. Thursday evenings were dedicated to board games, where Kareem discovered that his business acumen offered no advantage against Aman's uncanny luck at chutes and ladders. One evening, as they sat in the garden watching Aman chase fireflies, Lila finally signed the new contract. She did so without fanfare, simply placing her signature on the line and handing it back to Kareem. "I'm choosing to believe in this," she said quietly. "In us." The transformation in their relationship didn't happen overnight. Trust built slowly, brick by careful brick. Lila began sharing more about her past, stories of her childhood, her dreams, before life had narrowed her options, her fears about motherhood. Kareem, in turn, revealed more of himself, beyond the polished facade of wealth and power. His passion for architecture, his secret enjoyment of cooking, his lingering grief for his mother. As Lila's pregnancy progressed, their physical connection deepened as well. What began as Kareem tentatively placing a hand on her growing belly to feel the baby's movements evolved into a natural physical closeness that neither had anticipated. Their first kiss happened on a rainy afternoon, neither planning it nor resisting when the moment presented itself. "I never imagined this," Lila confessed one night as they lay together, her head resting on his chest. "When I walked into that auction, I thought I was selling my future, not finding it. And I thought I was purchasing simplicity," Kareem replied, not discovering how much I needed connection. The culmination of their journey came on a quiet evening months later. Lila entered Kareem's study to find him standing by the fireplace, the original contract in his hands. Without speaking, he met her eyes and deliberately tore the document in half, then quarters, then smaller, still, until the paper that had once defined their relationship lay in confetti-like pieces on the floor. "No contract can contain what I feel for you," he said, his voice more vulnerable than she had ever heard it. "No legal document could ever capture what we've become to each other." Lila stepped forward, the scattered pieces of paper crunching beneath her feet. "And what have we become?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something I never believed in before," he answered, drawing her close. "A family built on choice, not obligation." The word family had just left Kareem's lips when Lila's first contraction hit with unexpected force. A sharp gasp escaped her as she doubled over, clutching her abdomen. Their eyes met in a moment of mutual understanding. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. Their child was arriving 6 weeks early, transforming their quiet evening into a race against time. "The baby's coming," she whispered, her voice tight with pain and fear. The calm, controlled billionaire who had orchestrated every aspect of his life vanished in an instant. In his place stood a man gripped by panic, calling for the driver while gathering Lila's hospital bag with trembling hands. The drive to the hospital became a blur of red lights, and Kareem's voice, steady now, as he coached Lila through each contraction. Gone was the businessman who had once coldly negotiated the terms of their arrangement. In his place was a partner, his hand offered willingly, as she squeezed it with each wave of pain. "I'm right here," he repeated, a mantra that seemed as much for himself as for her. "We're going to get through this together." The hospital's bright fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Lila's face as medical staff rushed to assess her condition. When a nurse firmly suggested Kareem wait outside, his response came without hesitation. "I'm staying." 2 words, spoken with such finality that the staff exchanged glances before nodding. He positioned himself at Lila's side, his presence unwavering, even as monitors beeped warnings about the baby's accelerated heart rate. The attending physician spoke in measured tones about the risks of premature labor. Lila's eyes clouded with fear, but Kareem leaned forward, his focus intense. "What do we need to do?" he asked, the word "we" hanging in the air between them, a small linguistic revolution marking his transformation. Hours passed in a strange rhythm of pain and respite. During one particularly brutal contraction, Lila cried out, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this," she gasped. Kareem's response came with unexpected gentleness. "You can," he said, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "You're the strongest person I've ever known." In that sterile room, with machines tracking vital signs and medical staff moving efficiently around them, something profound was happening between them. The shared crisis was stripping away pretenses, leaving only raw humanity. Research has shown that during childbirth, the body releases massive amounts of oxytocin, often called the love hormone, which plays a crucial role in enhancing emotional connections between partners. For Kareem and Lila, this biological reality was reinforced by the intensity of facing life's most primal challenge together. As labor progressed, hospital protocols seemed designed to separate them, forms requiring Kareem's attention, questions directed only to Lila. Yet each time, he navigated these obstacles with a determination that surprised the staff. When one nurse referred to him as the father, he didn't correct her. The legal distinctions that had once seemed so important to him now felt irrelevant in the face of what they were experiencing. "Push," the doctor commanded, and Lila gathered her remaining strength. Kareem supported her back, his face close to hers, whispering encouragement with each effort. Their son entered the world with a defiant cry that echoed through the delivery room. The doctor placed the tiny red-faced infant on Lila's chest. "He's small, but his lungs are strong," she said with a smile. Kareem stood transfixed, watching his son take his first breaths. His expression reflected a bewildering mix of emotions: wonder, fear, and something deeper that hadn't been there before. When the nurse asked if he wanted to hold his son, he hesitated only briefly before extending his arms. The moment the child was placed in Kareem's embrace, something shifted in his expression. This wasn't the heir he had coldly commissioned through a legal document. This was a miracle of flesh and blood, with Lila's delicate nose and his own dark brows. The baby's tiny hand curled reflexively around his finger, creating a physical connection that seemed to travel straight to his heart. "He's perfect," Kareem whispered, his voice rough with emotion. For a man who had spent his life avoiding vulnerability, the tears that welled in his eyes were as surprising to him as they were to Lila, who watched this transformation with silent wonder. In the quiet hours that followed, as Lila rested and their son was monitored in the neonatal unit due to his premature arrival, Kareem sat beside her bed, his thoughts visibly churning behind his tired eyes. "I keep thinking about the contract," he finally said, breaking the peaceful silence. Lila tensed, her hand instinctively moving to her now empty belly. Though they had torn up the original agreement months ago, its shadow still sometimes fell between them. "What about it?" she asked cautiously. "How could I have ever thought?" Kareem stopped, struggling to find words. "The idea that you would carry him for 9 months, feel him grow inside you, go through all of this pain, and then just leave." He shook his head, disgust evident in his expression. "I don't recognize that man anymore." The crisis of premature labor had accelerated a transformation that had been months in the making. Research indicates that shared experiences during labor, especially those involving high-stress situations, can foster a profound sense of unity between partners. For Kareem and Lila, facing this unexpected challenge together had created a bond that transcended their original arrangement. Later that evening, when they were finally allowed to visit their son in the NICU, they stood side by side before the incubator. The baby was connected to monitors, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. A nurse explained the various readouts, assuring them that despite his early arrival, he was doing well. "Would you like to try kangaroo care?" she asked Lila, explaining how skin-to-skin contact could help stabilize the baby's temperature and heart rate. Lila nodded eagerly, and soon their son was nestled against her chest, his skin warming against hers. Kareem watched them with an expression of such tenderness that Lila felt her heart constrict. "What are we going to name him?" she asked softly. Kareem considered for a moment. "What about Zayn?" he suggested. "It means beauty or grace in Arabic." "Zayn," Lila repeated, testing the name as she gazed down at their son. "It's perfect." As visiting hours came to an end, they reluctantly prepared to leave, promising to return first thing in the morning. In the quiet of Lila's hospital room, Kareem sat on the edge of her bed, taking her hand in his. "I can't imagine my life without you both," he confessed, the words emerging with difficulty from a man unaccustomed to emotional declarations. "The terms of our original contract, they're unthinkable to me now." Lila studied his face, searching for any hint of the calculating businessman who had once purchased her at auction. Instead, she found only sincerity in his tired eyes. "We've come a long way," she said simply. Kareem nodded, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "I want you to know that whatever happens next, it will be your choice. You and Zayn and Aman. You're not bound by any contract. You're free to stay or go." The statement hung between them, a testament to how profoundly he had changed. From a man who had once sought to control every aspect of their arrangement, to someone offering freedom without conditions. "And what do you want?" Lila asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want what I never thought I needed," he answered, drawing her hand to his lips. "A family, not bound by legal documents or obligation, but by choice, every day." 3 weeks after Zayn's birth, Kareem stood by the nursery window, watching his son sleep peacefully in the soft glow of a nightlight. He reached into his pocket, feeling the small velvet box that had been burning a hole there for days. The diamond ring inside represented far more than a traditional proposal. It symbolized his complete transformation from a man who once believed love was a business transaction to someone who understood its true value couldn't be measured. Family, by choice, every day, was a beautiful sentiment, but Kareem knew words alone couldn't erase their complicated beginning. As he prepared to take the ultimate risk, he recognized that replacing the contract that once defined them with something far more vulnerable would forever change the power balance between them. No longer would he be the businessman who had purchased a woman's reproductive services. He would be a man on his knees, asking for a lifetime of partnership. That evening, Kareem arranged for Amira to watch over baby Zayn while he prepared the garden terrace. He scattered rose petals along the path and lit dozens of candles that flickered in the gentle breeze. The table was set with fine china, crystal glasses catching the last rays of sunset. But the most important element sat in his jacket pocket, both the diamond ring and the original contract, which he had secretly retrieved from the safe, where Lila believed it remained locked away. "This is beautiful," Lila gasped as she stepped onto the terrace, her hand flying to her heart. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion," Kareem replied, his voice steadier than his nerves. "Just celebrating our family." As they enjoyed dinner, Kareem found himself studying Lila's face, memorizing every detail. The slight crinkle at the corner of her eyes when she smiled, the determined set of her jaw that had first caught his attention at the auction, the softness in her gaze when she spoke of their children. She had transformed, too, from a desperate mother willing to sacrifice everything to a woman who had reclaimed her power and discovered her worth. When a man appeared on the terrace, dressed in his best clothes and carrying a small box, Lila's eyes widened in surprise. "A man! I thought you were in bed," she exclaimed, looking between her son and Kareem with growing suspicion. "I'm helping with the special mission," Aman declared proudly, shooting Kareem a conspiratorial grin that made Lila's heart skip a beat. The psychological shift between them was palpable. Where once their relationship had been defined by power imbalance, they now navigated a more equitable dynamic that honored both their vulnerabilities and strengths. Research has shown that such transitions require significant emotional intelligence, with both partners consciously reshaping their expectations and roles. Kareem stood, his hands trembling slightly as he withdrew the original contract from his pocket. "This document once defined everything between us," he said, his voice low and earnest. "A transaction, a business arrangement, a way for me to get what I wanted without risking emotional investment." Lila's breath caught as Kareem slowly tore the contract into pieces, letting them fall like confetti around them. Each torn fragment represented a shedding of his former self, the man who believed human connections could be purchased rather than earned. "Now I stand before you with nothing to hide behind," he continued, kneeling in front of her. "No legal protections, no clauses or terms, just a man who has discovered that what he truly needs can't be bought or negotiated." Aman watched with wide eyes as Kareem opened the small velvet box, revealing a stunning diamond ring that caught the candlelight and scattered tiny rainbows across Lila's face. "Symbolic gestures vary across cultures," Kareem said, "but in many traditions, this represents not ownership, but a promise of partnership and mutual respect. That's what I'm offering you, Lila. Not a contract, but a commitment. Not ownership, but partnership. Not obligation, but choice." Tears filled Lila's eyes as she stared at the ring, then at the torn paper surrounding them. Her hands trembled as she processed the magnitude of this moment. "How do I know this is real?" she whispered, giving voice to her deepest fears. How can someone change so completely? It was a fair question. The man who had once purchased her at an auction was now asking for her hand in marriage, a transformation so profound it seemed almost impossible. Experts suggest that such fundamental changes in worldview require transparency, trust-building, and mutual respect, all elements they had been cultivating during their time together. "I can't erase our beginning," Kareem acknowledged, still kneeling. "But I can promise that every day forward will be a choice we make together. You've shown me what family truly means. Not bloodlines or legacies, but love freely given and received." Aman stepped forward, placing his hand on his mother's shoulder. "Mom, can Kareem be my dad too? He already taught me how to play chess and promised to take me to see the stars with a real telescope." The innocence of Aman's question broke the tension, drawing a watery laugh from Lila. The journey of incorporating children from previous relationships into new family dynamics often requires precisely this kind of open communication and willingness to blend different elements into a cohesive whole. Kareem remained silent, giving Lila space to process her feelings. The man who once commanded rooms with his authority now made himself vulnerable, allowing her the power to determine their future. The deliberate shift in their power dynamic represented his most profound change, recognizing that true connection requires equality rather than dominance. Lila's gaze shifted between Kareem and Aman, weighing their complicated history against the possibility of a future together. The torn contract at their feet symbolized the destruction of their old relationship, one based on necessity and desperation, while the ring offered something entirely new. "You once bought me," she said finally, her voice steady despite her tears. "And now you're asking me to choose you." "Yes," Kareem said simply, "because anything worth having must be freely given." For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, Lila looked at the scattered pieces of their contract. Then, with a deep breath that seemed to release years of tension, she extended her hand. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." Aman erupted into cheers as Kareem slipped the ring onto Lila's finger, their hands intertwining like their futures. The family they had created, not through blood or contracts but through choice and love, stood complete beneath the star-lit sky. What does it mean when a man who once thought happiness could be purchased stands before witnesses to declare its true value? As Lila walked toward Kareem on their wedding day, the weight of their extraordinary beginning hung in the balance against the promise of their future. A promise that would redefine what family truly means in modern society. The mansion that had once symbolized Lila's confinement now blossomed with life and celebration. Delicate paper lanterns illuminated the garden pathways, while intricate henna patterns adorned the tent poles, where east met west in a harmonious blend of traditions. The grand marble staircase, once cold and imposing, now cascaded with garlands of jasmine and desert roses, a fragrant tribute to the familial roots that had shaped them both. "Look what they did to our home, Mama," Aman exclaimed, running through the transformed space in his miniature tuxedo. His innocent use of "our home" wasn't lost on Lila, who exchanged a meaningful glance with Kareem. The mansion had evolved from a symbol of financial exchange to a genuine family sanctuary. Behind the joyful facade, undercurrents of tension rippled through the gathering. Hushed conversations faltered as Lila passed by groups of Kareem's business associates. Their eyes tracked her movements, curiosity barely concealed behind polite smiles. "Is that really the woman from the auction?" one whispered, unaware that Amira was within earshot. The loyal housekeeper responded with a steely glance that silenced further speculation. Yet what made this wedding truly remarkable wasn't the opulent decorations or whispered controversies, but the deliberate choices Lila and Kareem had made in crafting their ceremony. Rather than privileging either cultural tradition, they had created something entirely new, a blueprint for their unified future. The ceremony space featured a circular arrangement rather than the traditional divided sides, symbolizing the continuous nature of their journey together. Rows of chairs formed concentric circles around a central platform where 7 pillars stood, representing wisdom, understanding, family, resilience, commitment, passion, and harmony. Each pillar had been wrapped in fabric from both their heritages. "We wanted every element to reflect equality in our relationship," Kareem explained to his curious uncle, who had questioned the unconventional setup. "This marriage isn't about one of us joining the other's world. It's about creating something new together." The ceremony itself blended spiritual and personal elements with meticulous intention. Instead of being given away, Lila walked a spiral path to the center on her own, demonstrating her independent choice to enter this union. Halfway along her journey, Aman joined her, and together they completed the path to where Kareem waited. This visual representation of their blended family moved even the most skeptical guests. When the time came for vows, Kareem's voice broke unexpectedly. The man who had commanded boardrooms with unwavering authority now struggled to find words before the woman who had taught him that true power lay in vulnerability. "I once believed," he began, his voice steadying, "that everything of value could be acquired through careful negotiation and proper compensation." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. "I approached our relationship as a transaction, believing family was merely about continuation of bloodlines. What you showed me, Lila, is that family means connection, not just continuation." From her seat in the front row, Amira dabbed at her eyes, remembering the cold, methodical man who had once viewed Lila as little more than a means to an end. The transformation she had witnessed over these months seemed nothing short of miraculous. When it came time for the ring ceremony, Aman stepped forward with solemn importance, the small velvet cushion held carefully between his hands. His role in this ceremony wasn't merely decorative, it represented his central place in their newly formed family unit. As he presented the rings, Lila knelt to his level, whispering something that made him beam with pride before he ran back to sit beside Zayn's carrier, where the infant slept peacefully through the proceedings. Perhaps the most powerful moment came during the middle of the ceremony, when both Lila and Kareem poured sand from separate containers into a single vessel. The grains, distinct in color but forever inseparable once combined, created a visual metaphor for their lives moving forward. This simple act held particular significance for those guests who understood the complex beginning of their relationship. The gardens that had once felt like the boundaries of Lila's gilded cage now witnessed her greatest joy. Where she had once paced in lonely contemplation, children now darted between laughing guests. The fountain where she had cried in private now reflected the twinkling lights of celebration. As evening descended, the reception transformed the mansion's grand ballroom from its usual austere elegance to a vibrant gathering space where cultures collided, not in conflict, but in celebration. Musicians blended traditional instruments from both heritages, creating melodies that seemed to speak directly to their journey, sometimes discordant, but ultimately finding harmony. The moment everyone anticipated arrived as Kareem led Lila to the center of the floor for their first dance. The crowd formed a natural circle around them, witnessing the culmination of an improbable love story. As they moved together, the contrast between this moment and their first awkward encounters in the mansion hallways couldn't have been more pronounced. "Every pair of eyes is on us right now," Lila whispered, a hint of her old anxiety surfacing. Kareem's hand tightened reassuringly at her waist. "Let them look," he murmured. "Let them see what transformation looks like." His gaze held hers with unwavering certainty. "Meeting you was worth every fortune I possess, Lila. You've taught me the difference between owning something and truly cherishing it." In that moment, as they danced beneath the crystal chandeliers that had once symbolized the vast distance between their worlds, the journey came full circle. The mansion that had witnessed their beginning as a cold business arrangement now celebrated their union as equal partners. Every step across the ballroom floor represented miles of emotional distance they had traveled together. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Lila found a quiet moment with Aman, who had grown tired from the excitement. "Are you happy, Mama?" he asked sleepily, his head heavy against her shoulder. Looking across the room at Kareem, who held baby Zayn with a tenderness that would have been unimaginable months ago, Lila felt a certainty that transcended the doubts of their beginning. "Yes, my love," she answered. "This is what happiness feels like." As Lila and Kareem's story draws to a close, we witness something profound about the human spirit, its remarkable capacity for transformation. Their journey reveals how genuine connection can dissolve even the most rigid barriers of wealth and status. Psychological research confirms what their story illustrates. True character transformation occurs not through financial transactions, but through meaningful relationships that challenge our deepest values. While Kareem's wealth initially created an impenetrable wall between them, it was their shared vulnerability that ultimately built the bridge. In a world increasingly defined by transactional relationships, their story stands as a powerful reminder that our most fulfilling connections aren't purchased, but cultivated through mutual respect and authentic care. The walls that separated them, wealth, culture, circumstance, crumbled not through financial power, but through the recognition of each other's essential humanity. What contracts have we signed in our own lives? What unspoken agreements limit our ability to truly see and be seen by others? Perhaps, like Kareem and Lila, we might discover that tearing up these limiting agreements is the first step toward genuine freedom and connection.